Hi, nice to see you. Thank you for having me. So I'm the retail director. I started at Grace a couple of years ago, and we've been in retail. You've seen us in the shops for just over a year and a half, and we've just hit a 30 million retail sales value run rate. So we've scaled very, very quickly. So I'm just going to give you a quick bit of background on me. I've worked with lots and lots of startups. I've worked in scale-ups. I've seen Innocent definitely go from startup to scale-up, and I've worked for some mega giants as well. So I've seen all the differences in the different businesses, and I can definitely tell you going from the first to the second is definitely the hardest part. So a couple of questions for the audience. This is in the food world, so I don't know if anyone got anything to do with food in this room? Lots of techs. What percentage do you think of food startups get Series A funding? So get sort of £750,000 or more?
1%.
1%. So my CEO thinks it's about 10%. So what percentage of that number do you think then really starts scaling up? And that could be through people or revenue, or what percentage of the 10% do you think make it?
0.5%.
0.5%? Well, we think it's about 10%. And then they're probably bigger than you think, actually. Maybe in tech there's loads and loads more failures. And then what percent reach sort of 50 million of that? So they've got their money, they are scaling up. It's probably higher than you think it is. 40%. So what we're looking at is, for Grace to hit where it is now, about 70 million, the chances of it succeeding to that level are about 0.4%. So it's a pretty tough market. And I'll talk to you today about some of the experience that I've had from start to scale up. So the first thing, I'm sure you guys all know this, is when you're looking to start a business, is, are you solving a problem? So Gray's 7 founders, one of the guys that set up Gray's, a guy called Graham Bosher, and he set up Love Films, and he knew about sending things through the post. But they were sitting in Acton, in their very glamorous industrial park, and there was not a lot of healthy food choices. There was a vending machine, and you can eat stuff in the vending machine, which is great and delicious, but it might make you feel a bit guilty. Or you can buy apples, which are great, but it might be a bit boring. So they wanted to come up with something that tasted good, but did you good. And then the second question, is there a market? It's a bit small for you guys to read, but food market is ginormous. And luckily, nearly 60% of people are wanting to make healthier choices. So they're buying crisps and biscuits and sweets, but they'd rather be buying something healthier. And most of the time, especially in convenience outlets, they're finding that quite challenging. There's not a lot out there. So it's definitely a problem, and there's definitely a market. So this is how Grace launched, and I will explain any 3-letter acronym. So MVP stands for, anyone? Perfect, minimum viable product. You're a lot better than the retail guys that I speak to. So test and learn. So when they launched loads and loads of different boxes, threw them out there, saw what people liked, and eventually they came up with that size box. It's, as you can imagine, engineered within a millimetre to fit through the sort of Royal Mail standard letterbox size. And the idea, FFP, anyone? We call it fit for purpose. I like to say fantastic for purpose, but you start with a minimum viable product, and then eventually you launch something that works. So really quick one on Grace's business model, but effectively you start with lovely Holly. She's one of our product developers. Come up with new products, scour the world. We can innovate and bring a product to market within 24 hours if we want to. We're vertically integrated. It's got a lovely system called Darwin where all our data goes into. We have our own comms team, so they hand draw all the illustrations on the top of the packs. That can be uploaded to Hayes, our manufacturing site, which is Europe's second biggest manufacturing site for the particular products that we produce in Europe in real time. Then obviously we use our supply, our FedEx, etc. to get it out there. And because we're in the US and UK, there's 350 million particular postcodes we could deliver to if they wanted to order the box. And then the clever bit about Grace is when you get to it, has anyone had a subscription box? Lovely. So when you get your box, we send you a lot of people still don't know this, you get a rate or slate email. So you can say, yes, I love the olives, send them to me again, or no, please never send me that, I think, delicious beetroot infused brownie, flapjack, or whatever, and we'll never send that to you again. So the whole point is the rapid data analytics that we have built in. We analyse what you like, we know your preferences, and if we're releasing more olives, we'll send it to people that love olives, and we'll never send it to people that have said they don't like them. So we're building up that sort of fast, adaptable model and rapid learning model as we go. So we launched into America. I was just saying the one reason we didn't launch into retail sooner. America went absolutely bananas. We hit a $35 million run rate within a year. We think it was one of the most successful food launches in America, British food launches, because as you know, sometimes a lot of British stuff doesn't work in America. Again, MVP, we just put our UK snacks in. Who was to know that the American taste preferences are very different to the UK? So within 12 months, 90% of the range had changed. So we completely changed the range, even down to things like the American taste for barbecue. Any Americans here? No? Hello? Hi. Apparently, American taste for barbecue very different to the UK. It's much sweeter. So we changed everything. We changed everything. Really interesting, flapjacks. Guys didn't have flapjacks out there, but they've gone down really well. People love flapjacks. So, very, very quick growth over the years. It's the one reason we didn't launch retail sooner. I was due to start at Grace a year earlier, and Anthony, our CEO, phoned me up and said, could you just stay at Diageo for another year? Because America was just all hands to the pump. So another thing, as you can probably imagine, we have a lot of data, and we're data obsessed. We've got about 4 or 5 data scientists. Data is available to everyone. We use Tableau. Anyone heard of Tableau? Use Tableau? Yeah. And so, yeah, it's free. So we know a lot about our grazers. We know what they like, what they don't like, where they are. When I was interviewing for the company, I said, God, isn't it just a yuppie London southern-based brand? And we were just talking earlier, isn't this cute little company? Actually, we under-index in London. I think 80% of our boxes are now sent home, whereas it used to be a lot in the office. But people have grown up with Grays and had children, and they're now delivered home, although 60% is even outside the home. So, why did we launch into retail? A few very, very quick stats, where we get a lot of information. Actually, it's probably about 0.7 billion ratings we've had since we launched. It can be up to 15,000 an hour. We actually have spent a huge amount on media, and we've got 80% brand awareness prompted. So if you walk up to anyone in the street in the UK and say, have you heard of Grace? 80% of people will have done, which is huge for a startup. We interact with our consumers a hell of a lot. We know them really well, 5,000 emails across the US and the UK a week. And we've got lots and lots of people on our database. We've got more people on our database than quite a lot of people's loyalty cards. And the good news is when people do what we call churn, as you probably know, out of subscription, most people would still recommend it. It just didn't work for them. They've moved house, they've had children, they've gone back to work, something's changed. And the really good news is the people that have churned, they're 6 times more likely to buy us in a shop because it's obviously so much more convenient. So they gave us some good stats to say we're massive data geeks, to sort of triangulate the data points and say, I think it could be a good idea. And believe me, there were questions.
Sorry, is it okay if I have a question?
Yeah, please do.
One thing I was just trying to understand, when you said they're 6 times more likely to buy in store because it's more convenient, I mean, to my mind, and there must be something wrong with the way I'm thinking about it, is that isn't it more convenient just to have it delivered at home? Why is it more convenient to buy in store?
Yeah, you would have thought so. For some people, it's not at all. So, as I said, I was working for Diageo, I was working in Africa, 3 out of 4 weeks a month. So they used to pile up and things would go out of date, and it just wasn't convenient for me. For a lot of people, I have to tell you, subscribers, the box lands, and this is Chris Britton, who's our chairman, he said, the trouble is, Emma, the box lands, and I just, they're all gone. All 4, all gone. So for some people, they want to interact with Grays on a more regular basis. You know, when they're out and about, or they're popping to the gym, and just having something delivered to your home or to your office, and you can't pick it up all the time, isn't as convenient.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Please ask questions if you want to.
Actually, could I quick caveat? We've got a Q&A at the end.
Okay, sorry. I'll whiz through. So, we took the same approach, and I have learnt so much. I've got an FMCG background, fast-moving consumer goods background, you know, worked as a buyer for Tesco, learnt so much working for Grays. We've applied a lot of the tech principles to food, so we kind of like to think of ourselves as retail 2.0. So, we did exactly the same thing. I met the head of food for Boots in my first week, and he said, Emma, I've got one shop for you. So if you ever want to know the latest things that are happening in Boots, go into the shop on Charing Cross Road. That's where they launch all their new stuff. And so within 6 weeks, we had gone from a tech business to a multi-channel business. We've launched 9 SKUs, as we call them, stock keeping units, so that's 9 products. And we did loads and loads of research. So we did what we call shop-alongs, when you go out with the consumers and get the feedback. We got feedback from the retailer, feedback from the people that work in the stores. Did the thing open okay? And I call that minimum viable product. 12 weeks gave us loads of information in one shop. So this sort of test and learn, be agile model worked really well in retail as well. Pulled it off the shelf, and FFP, fit for purpose, we launched July, just under 2 years, just over 2 years ago, with a range of 12. So you can see we made the window bigger, we made the brand bigger, etc. And within 3 months, we had 2 incredible data points. We only launched with 3 retailers as well, and that would be another tip. Like, we made sure it worked because we didn't want to go too big and screw it up, quite frankly, because we've never done this before. So in Smiths, we knew we were selling more than Snickers, Mars and Twix combined, which is quite incredible. And in Boots, within 3 months, we were already the 3rd largest selling food brand. So that was kind of a nice indication that it was going to work. The one thing we did do, and again a lot of big manufacturers don't do this, is we failed really fast. So literally within a couple of months I could see there were 3 SKUs, or 3 of the snacks that just weren't performing. So we can act really quick, but you have to wait for retailers to keep up. We delisted them, we took them out proactively. A lot of people, manufacturers trying to keep stuff on the shelf, and we put in 3 new ones, and lo and behold, we had 120% uplift. Now, lots of companies can't do that. I have the privilege of having an online subscription service that have got 150 products that I can just pick and choose from. So very, very lucky. And innovate. So now we're in snacking and now we're in stores. We know that nearly 80% of the snacking market is actually taken home and eaten at home. Who'd have thought it? I mean, we're probably all out and about all the time, popping into Smiths and Boots for our snacks, but actually the big where the money's spent is mums and dads walking up and down the aisle, putting stuff in their trolleys to take home to distribute over the week. And we didn't have a product for that. So we've introduced sharing bags, we've introduced triple packs, and there's loads more to go for. So, do we have a multi-channel advantage? That's the question. Was there any point launching into retail? We've got a subscription service, we've got an e-commerce shop, because, Sir, to your point, some people don't want 4 different snacks every week. They want to order 7 or 20 lemon drizzle flapjacks, and that's all they want. So we launched the shop, and we're in retail. I think the key part of the multi-channel advantage is understand what each channel does. So subscription is all about excitement and new and different, and we always launch our innovation online first, so they're the most loyal customers. We give them the new stuff first. And then Graze is obviously mass market. We pick our top products that we know are going to sell, because it's punishing the FMCG market. If it's not selling, you're off the shelf, and you have to innovate and keep your range fresh, otherwise you just get delisted. It's such a competitive environment. Other great part of being multi-channel, we look at a ratio called CAC LTV. Does anyone want to hazard a guess of what that is?
Customer acquisition cost for the first bit.
Yes, correct, sir.
Lifetime
value. Again, you guys are geniuses compared to some of the guys I speak to. So the cost of acquiring the customer, how does that relate to the lifetime value or the profit generated? And we look at that for absolutely everything. Everything. Can be painful, but it's a really, really good way of assessing whether it's worth investing or there's an opportunity cost and you should invest somewhere else. So the great thing about Graze is we can drive people from our online subscription site to offline using CRM. So when we launched into 1,000 Tesco stores, we know where people get their boxes delivered. So literally, if you live 5 kilometres from a Tesco, we can say to you, right, it's in your local Tesco, go and let us know what you think. So that's been a very, very healthy way of driving awareness. And we also drive offline to online. CTA, anyone want to hazard a guess at that one? Call to action. I love you guys. So, call to action. If you look in your Graze Planet, when you take the plastic box out, you'll have a code inside, and that will give you a free subscription box. Actually, we don't tell you, but you get your first and your 5th free if anyone's thinking of signing up tonight. That is generating very healthy, very nice revenue for our online subscription model, and it doesn't cost us a thing. It doesn't annoy the retailers because it's on the inside. That's sort of a nice way of just surprising and delighting and telling them there's more online. Just a couple more slides. So obviously, as I said, we're data geeks. We've got Darwin in the middle. The more channels you're in, the more data points you've got, the more you can triangulate the data. We know lots of interesting things. Like we matched up our online database with Nectar, first time they've ever done that, and we knew that in the first year 80% of people had never interacted, that had bought us in Sainsbury's with their Nectar card, had not interacted with us before. So we've obviously got people that have signed up, people that have churned, And then we've got this lovely cohort of people that we call zero box freakouts, because you sign in and you log in, and then we ask for your credit card and they freak out and they exit, but we've still got their email address. And we know more channels, more loyalty, and people that shop across more channels, they spend more. So if you can find ways to make it easy for your consumers that love you will interact with you in lots and lots of different ways. It's not one customer, one channel. And then I've got to talk about team, just talking about it here. It's the biggest part of my job, I think, is managing the growth, going from 1 to, we're nearly 25 now. So hire well. Do you tend to need different people at different stages? This is the fastest growth that I've ever seen, in going from startups to scale up. Startups, lots of enthusiasm, very emotionally driven. You don't normally have to pay them too much, or you don't have the money to overinvest in salary. Extremely intelligent, loads of drive. When you get bigger and bigger, you need leaders and you need people that can grow the business with you. So about 8 months ago, I had a whole session with the team, and I said, right, we're not just going multi-channel, we're going multi-level. Bringing in a senior management team that can lead for growth has been really, really critical. And then the biggest thing for me, the way I led, is just empower your team, empower them to deliver. If the KPIs are clear, people will deliver for you, and then just keep encouraging them. And exit well. If it's not working, make the hard decision, and do it well, and give everyone a lead to do, and make sure you help them on their way. But when you're in a really small team, the wrong person can cause not necessarily problems, but you really need to get the right people. Culture and communication. So again, I've been very lucky to have been part of Innocent, where the culture is incredible, taught me so much. And we set out from the beginning, even when there were 3 of us, what is our manifesto as a team? And we built on it. When new people come in, we reassess it and we rewrite it. But in keeping a culture going is so important, because as you go multi-level, communication becomes harder. It's harder to get feedback, and if you've built that in as part of your sort of way of being and way of being right from the beginning, and just weave it in, it will just become so much easier, because it can be very disconcerting when someone's been, had quite a lot of responsibility and someone's been brought in above them. So you have to just keep that culture going. And I would say future-proof for success. We have grown so rapidly. We've been a little bit on the back foot in terms of putting in process, and it's been a big learning curve for me. If you're aiming for a huge number, plan now. Plan your finance systems, plan your CRM systems for growth, if you can see it coming, because the last thing you need to be doing is worrying about all that stuff when you should be out there generating revenue. And have fun. We have a lot of fun. We do a lot of social stuff. It's work hard, play hard. But if people aren't bouncing into work every day, then especially when it's this hard, it is exhausting. You're going to be stuck. So I won't go through all the summary points, but a couple of things that we touched on today: fail fast, test and learn, understand your customers, innovate, embrace data. But the one that always sticks out for me is your people are key. That's a wall at Grays. There are 5 values: be pioneering, be curious, be commercial, be resilient, be helpful. And as I said at the beginning, if you set that out as your stall, as you grow and as you scale, you just keep the culture and you keep making the magic happen. Thank you very much.
Just while we're setting up the next set of slides, anyone that's sitting at the back or standing at the back, there's 5 seats just here. This gentleman, I believe, is single, very attractive. So ladies here, please do take up these seats, and we'll just set up the next speaker.
I'll stand up as well. Hello. I'm founder of Abundance. I haven't got many slides. There's 3 slides which give a little bit of a summary of what we're about. Abundance is a regulated crowdfunding platform. We allow the public to use their money to help build social infrastructure projects across the UK. And my journey really started here at Imperial because it was an idea I took into the MBA program after leaving my previous business, and then worked on, actually pitched it to a gentleman here, Bruno Cotter, in the sort of a month after the start of the MBA. He told me I was mad, I should probably listen to him, because it took 5 years to get us launched after that meeting, because we didn't know it at the time, but what we're doing was now labelled crowdfunding. Crowdfunding didn't exist as a term then, and we had to go and get ourselves regulated by the FSA to start the business, and the FCA looked at us and said, mad, we're never going to authorise you, and we had to go through a 2.5-year process with them, trying to educate them about crowdfunding. We started to use that term, and why it wasn't going to bring down the financial system, and why it's actually something very positive. But just one of the sort of conversations we had during that process was the regulator saying the idea of individuals coming together and investing directly into companies, small companies in the UK, is too complex and risky for the average person to understand. And thinking back to sort of 2010, we wrote a letter back to the FCA and said, look, you've allowed people to buy shares in RBS. The guy running RBS doesn't understand the complexity and risk in his business. The types of things we were looking at, which is wind farms, solar farms, we were saying, surely this is a much simpler thing for people to understand, a much more appropriate place for people to put their money in. After many more battles, we got authorised in 2012 up and running. So Abundance simply allows the public to come onto the platform, use their money to help finance the building and construction of renewable energy and other social infrastructure. Up to now it's been wind farms, solar farms, biomass, but as we go into 2017, sort of late this year, 2018, we're starting to look at broader infrastructure. So we're working with the government on bringing the public into the financing of things such as GP surgeries and schools, so taking PFI, as it used to be known, private finance initiatives, and trying to reinvent it, bring the public back into the financing of building infrastructure. So I'll probably actually cover most of this. So yes, we've done 40 million of long-term project finance to date. That's from 3,000 investors, and as sort of as reference at the start, you might have seen recently the sort of adverts we've been taking out into the sort of outside world on the tubes. Waterloo was a big advertising campaign, but taking this message of using your money to build a better world out to the public. But what I was asked just to sort of say briefly, a few words on today, was the sort of journey of being a sort of the CEO of a company from startup through to the sort of point where we're sort of touching on now. It's the scale-up phase, and what that has been like as a journey, and some of the sort of challenges that we're facing in that process. And it is an incredible experience from starting with myself, an idea, and then having to build a team around it. The first big challenge is handing over control and sort of delegating is a massive challenge, because when you've started something, you are obsessive about every last detail, and the idea of handing over an element of the business to somebody else to run with is emotionally quite taxing. But you've got to go through the process, and you hand over the first phase and you start to delegate, and then the challenge becomes about which bits do you want to retain oversight on, which bits do you want to retain total control on, and which bits you really sort of hand across. And I don't think we've got that perfect yes, and you're continually iterating on it. And I think if there's any, for each individual business person, it will always be slightly different about where your strengths lie, and recognising your strength and recognising the strengths of the team. But certain things I always want to continue to see, just any communication, actually, the sort of newsletters we put out, I like to see that, because that's the heart of our business, that's the essence of the brand, where we're communicating with our customers, or if we're putting the big adverts out. But the core communications I always want to have some involvement with. But the other key part of that sort of journey, again, that has been the sort of the leader is, I've been reflecting on a lot in the last few months, is when you start the journey, you are essentially sort of there delivering on everything to drive the business forward on every aspect on a daily basis. And so entrepreneurs in general have that energy and drive to work, but you end up filling your day often with just tasks that ensure that you feel busy sometimes. If you get space, the natural inclination is I would go onto Google Analytics, onto Tableau, and start to look at the customer journeys, where the data points are, and then feed them back to the guy who's the UI person, the data guy's trying to have a conversation on that level of detail. And you can forget to just sort of sit back, enjoy that bit of space when it comes in your day, and use it to actually think ahead. Think what we're going to do in the next 3 months, next 6 months, 36 months. And as you start to scale, it's actually enjoying that space when it comes, and starting to think ahead and making sure you keep as a business that strategic long-term view, as well as the sort of detailed day-to-day view, and making sure you've got a team that balances those two viewpoints and then starts to communicate. I think that's the other piece we were just talking about earlier, is that culture side of things. As you start to develop, it's how you ensure that the flow of information, the business is working together on a people side of it, and that again is something I suppose we're now grappling with on a daily basis. This is not our office. Our office is still very much in the startup phase. It's so far from that, it's untrue. But this is actually, as we start to get to this sort of stage of our journey, we've gone from that core sort of group of people that launched the business in that startup phase, 10 of us, and then we're starting to scale, so we're now at 20 people, and the next people in after that core 10, then yes, they're passionate about the mission, yes, they're sort of vested in the business with share options, but you have to start to sort of deliver different parts of the business to make sure you keep that team together and that cohesiveness, and the sort of drive from certain aspects of the business start to move towards this is important, but it's recognising that that's, that you can create culture in lots of different ways, and I think that sort of communication side is something that we're really working on the business, making sure everybody feels part of the mission, that they feel they can be there in the conversation. But this is what I've noticed from reaching this sort of first point of properly scaling a business, is how in the last 6 months the conversations we've been having in the senior management team have changed from just pure business execution, which has been our conversations really up to now in business strategy, to actually starting to take more and more time talking about the team, the culture, what type of business we want to create internally. I think we're very proud of what we've created externally. Now we've got to make sure we reflect that back into the business and create that team, which means that we grow everybody and we keep the people we want to keep in the business, and have fun on the way. So, very short summary, but hopefully in the Q&A we can explore some of the things a bit more. Thank you.
Would be good. What do you think about the flags at the moment? You mentioned people and
what's keeping me up at the moment? Yeah, I think it's been the topic of the last sort of 2 months of the creating that culture. But you can never get away from just the simple reality of having to drive the growth. So we're working on setting up a fund with the Cabinet Office to help first mover public sector bodies to do the sort of PFI deals that I was talking about at the start, and that was keeping me awake because in about 2 weeks whether the Minister has signed it off. If it does, then that's going to have a huge pipeline of projects for us, so that's my core focus.
Well, I'd like to also now introduce you to Amara Akram, who has actually started off our sort of interest in scale-ups, at least from the business school and the college's perspective. So if you'll give your perspective from the elite programme at the London Stock Exchange.
Great, thank you. I have to say, whilst I'll talk about the programme, we are now actually, Elite itself is in a really exciting phase because we've become a separate legal entity of London Stock Exchange Group and are actually a scale-up ourselves. So I'm very much going through a similar challenge of building the team, and the leadership team is working on how we actually build an elite culture as well. So in the same boat, really. So really just to share a little bit about what Elite is, it was actually an initiative which started a few years back in Italy because Borsa Italiana is part of London Stock Exchange Group, with the view of just trying to help businesses that are in that scale-up phase, getting them to think about how to access capital, better prepare for that investment, think about actually just professionalizing as companies, but also really thinking about more kind of business-related activities like your general innovation growth strategies, internationalization and talent as well, of course. Following the success in Italy, I got involved in just finding out whether that kind of model initiative would actually work in the UK market. And through that, we also thought about how we would get a business school involved. So I met with a whole range of business schools across the UK and decided that we should go with Imperial because they were actually the most entrepreneurial of the lot, I have to say, rather than trying to sell me an off-the-shelf product. And Chris has been involved in the Elite from the start, helping to actually build some case studies of the companies that joined the program. So just kind of to share what the journey has been for Elite, it started off really as a program to help businesses that have a few million in revenue probably across a whole range of sectors from all over the UK. So to date we've had 19 businesses join the UK from 30 different sectors, and really ranging, even though we say revenue generating businesses, we have had some pre-revenue businesses depending on the sector, to our largest one being 200 million. They go through quite a structured program which we've developed with the business school, which focuses on all the kind of challenges you would expect a scale-up is facing. So it's things like general strategy stuff, talent management is definitely a big part of it, governance, financial planning, how you prepare yourself for investment, and as you would expect, being London Stock Exchange Group, a little bit around the IPO and what life is like as a public company. And what we find actually the biggest strength of the program is that companies join as cohorts, so 15 to 20 companies at a time, and Grays was part of our very first cohort 3 years ago. And going through that program as a cohort is really, really valuable, because the insights, the challenges you share with your peer group actually reassures you that you're not the only one in this boat, and actually you can share ideas and exchange ideas. And I think what's been really nice to see is how companies in completely different sectors can exchange ideas and learn from each other. So the program is actually not delivered just by us or by the business school. We have over 60 advisory partners in the UK, so banks, lawyers, accountants, brokers, PR firms, other specialist consultants, as well as investor groups, so VCs, private equity, institutional investors as well, who initially were probably a little bit skeptical about what this was all about, but actually now are very, very interested to see who are the companies that are joining. So we have a couple of intakes in a year, April and November, so our next one is coming up at the end of April. But alongside that program, we have also developed some new technologies and platforms to support some of that fundraising and access to investors, because really as London Stock Exchange Group, that is what our kind of core expertise is. This year we have actually launched a private placement platform. So through the program, we're giving companies access to understanding what different types of investors look for when investing in growth companies. And we felt that we could actually be better formalizing that. So we've developed this digital platform called the Elite Club Deal, which has just been approved by the FCA last month. And the idea is that it's coming through the program. As a company, you can effectively tick a box, share your investment proposition with some cornerstone investors that are registered on the platform. So for example, a BlackRock is a cornerstone investor. You would still have that offline discussion with the investors and setting the price, but then you can also, once you have secured those cornerstone investors, you can open your proposition to the wider investor group as well. And we see, given the diversity of companies on the program coming through Elite, that actually that investor base is also going to be quite broad, from angel networks, VCs, private equity, institutions, and also not just providing equity investment, but also debt products as well. We've also developed a digital platform for listed companies, and not just listed companies on our markets, but actually anywhere in the world, which is to, I guess, help companies that have an international investor base or would like to develop an international investor base really streamline that process and interaction with international investors. And that's referred to as Elite Connect. So really, I think I've kind of covered this already. But the idea is that companies join for an 18-month period. They have a number of modules that are delivered, usually in our building, but also at the business school, with a whole range of partners helping to kind of deliver the content. But we work with the business school to ensure that the content is really relevant for the different types of businesses that continue to join in each cohort. We also actually tap into our listed company population, or entrepreneurs we know, so business leaders who've been there, done that, to come and share their stories as well. So there's a little bit of that aspirational element for the scale-ups, but also some really practical takeaways from the whole program. So having started in Italy and expanded to the UK, we have actually grown throughout Europe and beyond. And I'm responsible for not just the UK, but actually seeing how it can expand outside of Europe. We have nearly 500 businesses that have joined to date. Of course, many of these have already completed the program, but we're also thinking of how we continue to have those relationships with the companies that have completed the program, how we can provide them additional services or continue to give them access to the Club Deal platform as well. So currently across, we have those companies come from 25 countries, quite significant kind of when they come together as a group. As you can see, 32 billion in revenues, over 175,000 employees. And I've already talked about the sector diversity, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how, as we get enter into more agreements outside of Europe as well, how that ecosystem continues to grow, because our vision really is to develop this global pool of scale-ups, because really, of course, there are local differences and local challenges that scale-ups face, but I think probably having spoken to companies that have joined the program and being involved in discussions around the world, I think probably the two key things companies worry about, of course, once they have their kind of real business strategy in place, is getting that access to finance to deliver that strategy, and getting access to the right and developing the right talent to help implement and continue with that strategy. So we think that actually using our network and working with local partners to build local ecosystems and then connecting companies onto this global platform is really, really powerful. So that has been really the vision of the group in creating the whole initiative. I think that's really it.
Yeah.
Finally, over to Tony Hickson from Imperial Innovations to talk about scaling up high-tech startups.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, so we're going to go now into a slightly different world, which is super high-tech companies that unfortunately don't generate much revenue and consume a lot of capital on the journey. So it is a little bit different, but it's interesting that these companies share a lot of the same experiences. So I'm from Imperial Innovations. We're a tech transfer company for Imperial College London. We commercialise intellectual property developed by the academics and staff at Imperial College. We've done about 150 spin-outs now. They've raised over £1 billion. Interestingly, we are a little bit unusual. We are part of a bigger stock market listed group called Touchstone Innovations. It's a PLC. It's floated on the AIM market. We've raised about £500 million to date. And this invests across high-tech startups in the golden triangle of Oxford, Cambridge and London. But the bit I work for, Imperial Innovations, we are focused 100% on Imperial College. We do services for Imperial, we only 4 startups for Imperial. And what are we aiming to do? What we're trying to do is cover all of these bases. We are trying to do tech transfer, get IP out of the university. We're trying to introduce them to venture capitalists and get money for them. We're trying to provide space for them, because London is a metropolis, it's a difficult place to find high-tech space. And we're trying to introduce them to management. And we're trying to do everything to get these startups off the ground, because it's hard and they need help. But so far we've done okay. So we've got a number of companies formed to date. You can see here the challenge, I guess, that we are facing is so many companies across so many areas. So it's not as if we just do oil and gas or we just do therapeutics. We're trying to cover the entire output spectrum of Imperial College London, a major science and technology university. So we've got to cater for all of that diversity, which is both exciting and fun, but is also very challenging. So that's one of the biggest challenges we face, is how do you cope with such diversity? The difference between a sort of small software startup that needs 20k to get it off the ground and bootstraps itself straight up and exits 1 year later, compared to a therapeutics company that might need £100 million in 15 years. They're very, very different. So, I mean, that's the point here. Outside of software, most of these companies, nearly all of them, consume a lot of capital. They require deep-pocketed investors to get them off the ground. Very few outside of software companies can really work in the domain of angel investors and sort of small bootstrap capital. They need large amounts of capital. They take a long time. So there are several published papers that say the typical lifetime of a technology from a university outside of software is 15 years to get to a value inflection point. That's a long time, much longer than big C's are used to operate. They need specialist facilities, they're biotechs and oil and gas and engineering companies, and they need specialist management. We'll come on to both of those in a minute. Why should we care? Why should we care about all these startups? Surely any startup will do as long as it's generating wealth for the UK. And that's completely true. Generating jobs and wealth for the UK is good, but actually the R&D ones are quite interesting because they tend to have higher productivity. You see 13% higher for those with no R&D. They tend to survive longer. Exactly the same number. They last 13% more likely to survive over 8 years than those that don't. And really interestingly, 4% of high-growth innovating firms generated 66% of all the new jobs in that particular period. I couldn't find any more recent data than that, but I'm sure there is. So they're good engines of growth for the UK, and the government likes them. The problem is the government has obsessed slightly, I think, over startups, spin-outs out of universities. And you keep seeing general reports start with the phrase, we are poor in the UK at getting our ideas out of academia and into commercialisation. And I think I would challenge that. I would seriously begin to challenge that now. Because there have been several reviews of UK tech transfer, and the data is showing this, that for every pound of research in the UK university, we file as many patents as the US, which is the big benchmark we're always measured against. We produce the same number of spin-outs when adjusted for research funding as the US. And we attract more industrial money to our universities than the US does. So I'm not actually convinced the problem is so much with producing new spin-outs and startups from UK universities. The problem is shifting to scale up. How do we scale up these businesses and how do we keep them sticky within the UK? And that's where we need to start focusing our efforts. So this talk is very timely. So on to the issues that we face then. What issues do we face as a business and what do we need? Well, we need consistent and long-term funding. As I've said, 15 years for the journey from a patent to a value inflection point. Most VC funds, 10-year funds, only invest for the first 5 years, manage out their investments for the last 5 years. So what do VC funds do? They sit back. They sit back and wait for the technology to be de-risked, because you make your money at the end of a company's life, not at the start of it. And that created a big funding gap. And what we need is patient capital that's going to bridge that all the way through. And very pleasingly, we started to see that happen in the UK. Now we started to see patient capital funds emerge. They're evergreen funds, their money is held on their balance sheet rather than a 10-year fund, and they can invest for the long term. There's no pressure to exit. In order to do that, we do need like-minded other patient capital funds to invest alongside us, because no one wants to take the risk on their own. You need like-minded people to syndicate with and test your assumptions. And in the UK now there is £5 billion worth of patient capital available. That is exactly the same number as in the US, which is 50 times bigger. So we've actually in the UK started quite an interesting sector, and most of these patient capital companies are floating on the London Stock Exchange. And we actually got 2 companies now who are only investing in the US, have floated on the London Stock Exchange because the analysts here are beginning to track the sector. So quite an interesting thing happening there. Now we also need functioning capital markets. Scale businesses, these high-tech businesses up, IPO is a potential exit for them. It's not really an exit, but you know what I mean. It's a way of some people getting out. The problem we face is that whilst retail investors on the IPO tend to understand sectors like oil and gas, they struggle with sectors like biotech. And the analyst cover for biotech is nowhere near as extensive and good. Maybe because we lack critical mass in the UK, I don't know. But actually, if you look at the risk profile, it is just as risky to explore for oil as it is to develop a therapeutic drug. Almost exactly the same risk profile. Yet people have no problem investing in oil and gas companies on the stock exchange. And I'm not quite sure what the solution is. Maybe Amira's got some ideas. Are our founders too risk averse? So should we let them take some cash out earlier? Why did Mark Zuckerberg turn down an offer for £4 billion, where it was for his company 5 years ago? Why did he stick with it and now made it a £100 billion company? Probably because he was able to take some money out on the journey. He wasn't under pressure. Yet we have this culture in the UK for venture capitalists, you can't take any money out. That shows you're losing confidence in your own business. But actually people are human, they need some money to keep them going. Maybe we need to change the rules a little bit. And then finally, venture debt. So venture debt is a good idea, and we're seeing more and more of it, but it's very hard to apply to our companies. Our companies are pre-revenue, so what are you lending against? So it doesn't help so much for us. Develop ecosystems, not spaces. So this is something we've learned. You are sitting in Imperial's experiment at an ecosystem. So we started with incubators, just pure incubators. Here's some nice space, high-tech space, that's great. Then we moved to accelerators. Here's some high-tech space with some training programs and some cohort-like models and some lean canvas techniques. And now we're moving to ecosystems. We're saying even that is not enough. We need industry, and this building you're in has been designed to accommodate industry, to accommodate investors, to accommodate service providers and startup companies. We are going to build an ecosystem around this campus, and we're going to allow lots of different people in. It's not just university people. And we've got to do that to foster this and make it happen. And we also need access to specialised resources, and the catapults and things like that around the UK is helping. And then lastly, management is as important as funding. We've heard that from the other panellists. Building the team is probably the biggest challenge we face. So previously, if you'd asked me that 5 or 10 years ago, I would have said finance was the biggest challenge we face for these high-tech startups. Now actually it's shifted slightly. Now the focus is actually on getting the right talent, high-quality management and employees into our businesses, because they are very specialised. Brexit hasn't helped. I mean, we haven't seen the effect yet, but we are worried. Because we source our managers. We want a manager for a pharmaceutical startup, we want a manager for oil and gas, we want one for high-tech nuclear materials. We have to source in a global environment for that, and we don't want to be restricted. We are recycling UK industrial talent, so in some ways the decline of the pharmaceutical industry in the UK has actually benefited us because we took people out of big pharma into our businesses. So we are recycling talent. We sometimes have to change the management teams, and that can be a problem for us. So if you're in a therapeutics company, you'll probably last the whole way because the company will be bought, probably pre-revenue, probably at phase 1 or phase 2, and the development manager who began that journey will see it all the way through. If you're a medical device company, which superficially you'd think was exactly the same, it's a healthcare product, they don't sell until they get to revenue. So you have a development team, you have an R&D type mindset for the first 2 years of the company's life, develop a product. And then you've got to switch the whole management team out to start selling the product, which is a very different skill set. And that can be a very wrenching experience for the startup to go through that. And then lastly, the founder's dilemma. So this Harvard Business School study which shows that founders who want to control things, and that's it, do very well, and founders who want to get rich, and that's it, do very well. Founders who want to control things and get very rich don't do very well, and founders who do the opposite don't do very well. And how can we get past that? And I see hope here, because we're seeing a new breed of students and postdocs coming through who are highly entrepreneurial, and Enterprise Lab is helping this new cadre of students come through who actually don't see that they can't be the manager of the company and be successful at the same time. They don't just see themselves as the R&D team who has to take a backseat role. So I think there's a lot of promise there. Thanks very much.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We're now going to open up to the floor for questions. And just before we do, I'd like to just open up a broad question that will. The first question will actually sort of covers a bit of everything you've heard so far, but we'd like you to vote on menti.com. So as the Q&A goes forward, please sort of give this some thought on what you feel is kind of the key constraints facing UK scale-ups. And I'd actually like to pose the same question to one of our speakers on Skype actually currently. So John Ryan is calling in from West Coast USA. John, can you hear us?
Yes, indeed, I can hear loud and clear, thanks.
Brilliant.
It's been great to listen to this.
Okay, so just a quick introduction to John. He's just recently joined the Enterprise Lab team as Entrepreneur in Region. We're currently building up this Entrepreneurs in Residence /Region model. We've got one in Boston, East Coast US. We've got one in Singapore now, and John's just joined the team from Palo Alto in the States. President and CEO for the Center for Creative Leadership and serial entrepreneur. So John, I thought maybe I could pose the first question to yourself. I might take that liberty just to ask, what's so different about the US? So why is it that the UK and US seem to have such different experience? Is it purely the size of the market, or is it capital constraints in the UK? Where do you perceive the key constraint to UK scale-up?
So let me, thanks very much. I mean, it's really great to be able to talk with Imperial College about this. And of course, the US is a very large place. So mainly I'm going to talk about Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley is sort of itself a relatively large place. When I came to California, leaving London, a friend of mine says you can look at any area and think about the culture by listening to who people hold in most admiration in popular culture. And when I left London, I think it would be like rock stars and football stars and maybe sort of like dukes and earls and the queen and stuff. They were sort of rock stars of society at the time. And even when I got here, which was a few decades ago, about 30 years ago, the people who were the stars of society were the brilliant founders of successful tech companies. So then it would be like the founders of Intel and Apple, and now it's people who are basically by their first names known across the world. Sergey and Larry and Mark and Elon and so on. And one of the things that is really, really different then is the culture here is that if you're thinking that somebody else is going to change the world, you probably really don't belong in Silicon Valley because it's on us. And I don't mean that to say that with sort of swag but it is. It's let's change the world and let's go do it. The second thing, and this is a very distinct difference in deal style between even the East Coast, particularly New York, and Silicon Valley, in thinking about what people invest in. And I think this has also shaped, made it a little more difficult for British-based startups, is that in New York, the typical deal that gets bankers excited because it's a big deal is either just a banking deal or it's real estate. And in both of those cases, the size of the opportunity is what it is, it's constrained. And so in the deal, all of the negotiation is basically about how little your slice of the pie is going to be. And when I moved to California from the East Coast, which is where I first came here, there was a guy who was trying to hire me as to run a company in the New York area. And he advised me that in California, you can't think like that. When you get together, the big question in the deal in Silicon Valley is, how big can we make this? If this is a $10 million deal, nobody's interested. Make it $100 million, $1 billion. Now at that point, if you can make it $1 billion deal, a $1 billion outcome, nobody really cares if they're only getting 15% versus 17%, because the big number is so much bigger. And it is that ethos that is actually now written into not just how people think, it is actually in the deal, the legal terms in the deal structures themselves. And so there's a very, very strong river in the culture that goes all the way to the way banks behave, law firms behave, venture capital behaves, how the limited partners behind venture capital behave, how some of the behaviors within startups emerge for good and for bad, is to focus not just on the local market, but on the biggest possible thing you could possibly do. And you can see that in the way that particularly Mark Zuckerberg and most recently Elon Musk are celebrated out of the Silicon Valley culture. That they are celebrated because even though Elon Musk's ventures may fail, at least he's trying to, what's the most recent one? He wants to put somebody on Mars. Just the astonishing unlimited scope of ambition is something that is really quite special here.
And it seems also the money, the big bucks to back it up as well. But I'd like to maybe open that same question maybe to one or two members of the panel before opening it up. So you mentioned you actually feel we're on a par with the US when it comes to high-tech spin-outs. And it seems there's some impressive statistics I had no idea, but actually backs up that point.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think the difference is that when people say the US, maybe John will agree, people are thinking Boston and San Francisco. And actually when you go to the US and you get outside of that and you go to some of the flyover states, that's where some of the true innovation, if you like, is occurring. Because they're a bit like us. They've had to make this happen because this fabled story of an academic walking in through our door with a venture capitalist on their arm, kicking open the doors and saying, I've got a startup ready to go, just give me the IP. It never happens. We just sit there waiting for the door to open. It never happens. So we have to help it and massage it, lubricate it, make it happen in our environment. And that's exactly what happens outside, I understand, of Boston and San Francisco. So I think we need to be careful who we're comparing ourselves to.
Yeah, and I also think actually there's a lot that has changed in the last 10 years. I think in the UK there is now more of an ecosystem and people collaborating and people coming together. Where it isn't just about startups. I think it has been for a long time, especially because the government was trying to make it easier to start a business, but actually the focus is shifting through people like the Scale Up Institute, etc., who are highlighting some of the challenges in helping businesses to scale up. And there is more of an interest also actually from the investor community and from the largest investors like the Legal & General and the BlackRocks of this world, who are very much interested in this space. Of course it will take time, and of course there are certain regulatory constraints around allowing for sufficiently large funds to be able to support businesses for the longer term, but I do think we're moving. I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think there's a lot to be optimistic about actually.
Just maybe add a little bit on that, because I've really seen that change in culture that I think we are shifting in the UK from, this is my second business, the first business I set up was in 2004, and there wasn't those ecosystems. You couldn't walk into these incubator hubs. We've got the likes of WeWork, all these sort of hubs where young businesses grow, and that sort of community around those workspaces is incredibly powerful. We've got lots of people in the same space saying, we're going to do great things, and that feeds off each other because competitive. They say, actually, mine's going to be a little bit better. I'm going to take over the world or whatever it is. And that's definitely shifted. Those ecosystems being there are helping support the next phase of business. And we've definitely felt that, being in rooms and saying, actually, we're going to go into the Treasury and we're going to tell them to rewrite how they do ISA in the UK, the Innovative Savings Allowance. People initially said, you never get the changes you need. But as a group, we went in there, and 3 years of lobbying the Treasury, we got them to rewrite rules and law to allow us to do things. That comes from having a community, and before, back in 2004, it felt isolated when you were doing startup. There wasn't those hubs.
Right, yeah, first question.
Yes, I'm always struck by the gung-ho venture capitalists and firms in the United States. Is it the case that there is a high propensity to go straight from missing out the startup phase and going straight to scale up off the back of a PowerPoint deck in the States, which doesn't exist in the UK? Do you think, John?
Rarely. Really rarely. the venture capital community is rarely, I can be characterized as gung-ho. It is actually a quite disciplined machine. And by the way, there are regional differences within that. The venture capital in the Boston, in the Northeast, is in fact more focused on biotechnology, and as one of the earlier speakers was observing, that requires much larger sums and much longer time horizons. But no, I think the machinery of venture capital, they have a broad net to sweep in companies for review. They have a system of socializing what they think about the opportunities. They're all quite focused on the portfolio that they want to invest in. That's both a statement on their website and a commitment to the limiteds that have money in on where they're going to go, and their ability to do due diligence in a sector, and reasonably ruthless in both accepting projects into their investment portfolio and deciding if they're not going to invest, or they're not going to re-up, or if they in fact actually want to shut down the project, because as I think we all know, there is a thing that is worse than a company failing, and that is when a company gets to a point where it's just miserable. You know, it can keep going, but nobody can ever have any fun. It won't grow, it won't generate significant cash, and so they're pretty ruthless. And I don't mean that as just sort of a really pejorative way. It is a very, very disciplined set of folks.
We've got one question here.
All of this sort of scaling is great, and I guess it's amazing if you have that idea that goes nuclear, but do you think you sacrifice culture? And I guess it's to you two guys, me and Carnella, but do you think there's a sacrifice or a balance to be made between really growing a business very fast and keeping what you felt was that initial feeling and ethic and culture that you found kicked it off and made it special?
I think there's always a risk in that, but I think that is the sort of one of the many challenges of growing business. So in one sense we've been quite lucky in that since we got regulated, growth has been steady. We double each year, but it's still a manageable amount of growth, and that's allowed us to not rush that process of growing the culture. But this next phase, as you start to expand the team out, that's the essence. You have to get to a certain scale just to be a proper business and a robust business, and therefore serve your customers in the best way possible. If we're not at a scale, we'll be vulnerable, and therefore you've got to bring your culture with you. And I think you've got many large companies that manage to maintain a great internal environment and a great product. So I don't think there's the two that work against each other. You just got to keep a focus on it, because if you don't focus on trying to create a framework, it will create itself, and it might not be the culture you want. So you've always got to look after the culture of the business.
Yeah, it's something I think about most days. The one thing I have learned is it's really important that you recruit people that facilitate that culture. And when you're growing so quick and it's so tempting to just put a bum on a seat, that is a recipe for disaster. So there's about 4 stages or 5 stages to our interview process, and it's not just me. The team will interview. You might get a CFO or CEO interviews, and they go through. It's quite a rigorous process to make sure you've got someone that aligns with your cultural values, because they absolutely have to. Otherwise, as we say, you want to grow, you want to be able to scale. Innocent did that so well, and I've learned loads from that. But it's in the recruitment. Get the right people. I know the head of HR for Apple said it's better to have a hole than an arsehole. It's quite a blunt way of putting it, but it could be more true. So I think they bringing the right people in that have the same moral values as you, and want to work as hard and are aligned to the mission. That's absolutely essential.
Yeah, one question there.
I'd appreciate a comment from Tony. It's not really a question, it's something if you could share your thoughts about. Some years ago, back when I was at university, innovation was all about R&D, and companies were developing R&D departments and financing those R&D departments. And innovation would have come from the big companies, IP, and then of course commercialized. And indeed, it's not a question. It's, what do you think about this new wave of startups, which of course are developing IP, and the, I think, healthy influx of financing from the big corporations? But from their perspective, what are they going to do? Are they going to keep on growing their R&D departments? Or are they going to say, actually, creativity is wonderful, comes from all over the world. Why do I have an R&D department here when I can go and purchase some ideas?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question. I don't think there's a right answer to it. I think we are observing a couple of different effects, completely opposite ends of the scale. So if I characterize the pharmaceutical industry, that is taking down, if you like, its R&D capability, and is realizing, not completely, but it is realizing that a lot of its innovation is now being sourced externally, and it's creating this open innovation framework where it allows porous movement of IP and people across boundaries, and accepting the really exciting stuff comes from outside. What it's really good at is developing it and moving it to market. Contrast that with your Googles and your Apples, and look at the innovation that is coming out of their internal labs. Yes, they're still acquiring companies, but they're actually incredibly innovative internally in their own R&D capability. So why are we seeing such, completely polarized perspectives happening in different industries? So I don't know the secret answer to your question.
Lady in the front here, yeah.
Question for you, Anna. I guess similar to what the guy was asking about culture, but for FMCG, how do you also ensure that the quality of the product remains just as good as it was in the first year, especially when you're scaling up in such a short time frame?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our strategy to build a brand, the first part of our three-part strategy is it starts with amazing product. So we have a phrase at Grace that we want to be proud of every planet, and we constantly we range review ourselves. So if we're not happy with the health credentials, they just go, they get delisted. And that's the nice thing about subscription, actually. If you launch something and it doesn't work, you just quietly delist it and no one ever knows. But there's, especially I always think, does it pass the Daily Mail journalist test? Would that person eat that and be able to write something good about it? And if it doesn't, we shouldn't be launching it. So I think we are proactively delisting and relisting stuff as we go, but we've got to be proud of it. I won't go bore you with the details, but every planet has nutritionist approved health badges. It's got to be under a certain number of calories. It's got to have additional health benefits, etc. So we do hold ourselves to account, and we get consumer feedback. So for example, all our palm oil is now sustainably sourced, but we don't put it on our packs. So we get lots of emails to customer services saying, "I'm not buying this product anymore." We have to proactively tell them we need to get that improved. So we are trying to improve things all the time, but you can't hide on the shelf. In the subscription service, you get your box, and you have to read the leaflet to be able to see what's in it. Everything is so clear in retail, and lots of new health legislations coming through, and the NHS are getting more involved in what should be in their hospitals and what shouldn't be. And we've got, Tesco, for example, at front of store in the impulse area, they will only put products on the front of store that have been approved by the NHS under their guidelines, so we make sure we line up to those. And then in America, it's all about GMO, so it's constant. We have a huge MPD team, we've got a huge product team, and they're working on this all the time.
Yeah, gentlemen.
This is a question for Omera and Tony. Are you guys both based on Imperial campuses, and what are your revenue models?
No, we aren't based at an Imperial campus. Most of the kind of get-togethers of the companies happen at the London Stock Exchange building, and now the program is pan-European. We also do a fair bit of online delivery as well, and our model is really companies pay to join the program.
Our model's a little complicated. As you saw, we're a venture capital listed company, and so if you like, that pays the bills. It will return capital through venture capital investments. The tech transfer office, if you're going to be a tech transfer office for a university, it's very hard to have a very hard-nosed commercial attitude. 90% of tech transfer offices in both the US and the UK do not make any money. They're there to achieve impact, to get technology out of the university and into society. And so often they have to be subsidised by someone. We're effectively subsidised by our group. Now, in some years, the last couple of years, we've been a net positive contributor because we've had spin-out exits and we've made things like that. But some years we're not. Some years we're loss-making to the group. So our revenue model does depend on how much intellectual property brings in money through royalties or through the sale of spin-out companies.
But you're based on the Imperial campus?
Yes.
Okay.
We're based in an office directly opposite the Imperial campus, owned by Imperial College.
This campus or the main one?
No, the main one. But we run the incubator here, and as the new buildings come online, we will be moving people here permanently.
Thank you.
Yeah, question here.
Two issues that perhaps we could discuss further. Data analysis is obviously very important. I'm rather interested in how you keep up with the feedback that you're getting. What proportion is responding and what is actually creating new? And I'm thinking particularly on the danger of being copied. That's the first thing. The second one is in terms of teams. At what stage does my team become and my product become our team and our product, whereby everybody is feels responsible and is allowed to contribute to the development of your product and what you're offering?
That's a very interesting question. That second one, I suppose when I started, it was obviously just my product, and then as soon as I brought the first extra person into the team, it was we, and it stayed we, and then that becomes an interesting dynamic because by the time you've got 15 people and everyone is we, you've got to have that, but it also creates tensions because suddenly people feel that they can control the marketing message on an ad that's going out onto the Tube network, and you can't have 15 people controlling a single 4-letter line on an ad. So you've got to then start to differentiate which bits of the we are you controlling, and yes, so it starts to become a more complex beast over time. Yeah, and on the data analytics side, that's I think just the heart of what we do in many ways. I think hearing the way you talk through it, it's key, and it's just then pulling out I suppose we just have a bank of people pulling out the information. It's trying to filter which is the interesting stuff for our insight and our product development that comes back from customers, and which is the day-to-day side. And that's a little bit of art and a little bit of just continually having a conversation on that flow of information to check that we're all keeping visibility over it.
I try really hard not to say my team. I realised we've just finished our financial year end, and I was writing the deck for the summary, and I used a lot of you. Look what you delivered. Look what you guys did. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Probably should have said, look what we did. But try and take a move when your managerial style changes completely. A year ago it was dictatorial, but you've got 10 direct reports. You've got the focus point for everything, and now I've got senior leaders. It's much more of a coaching model. On the data side, really depends what you're looking for. There's so much there, you can be absolutely bamboozled. When it's a very strategic question, go in knowing the right questions. And then, for example, when it's completely new, so combining EPOS, electronic point of sale, the retail data with our systems, it's new, we've never done it before. So the way we're going to work with that is a sort of iterative model. Put my best, the head of category with our head of data, and just lock them in a room and see what they come up with. So we try and sort of flex it for the right questions and the right approach for the different situations.
Not worried about being copied?
All the time. And that's another reason why we're keeping the products fresh. And I'll just say our top SKUs, we've got veggie protein power and punchy protein nuts, our lemon drizzle flapjack flies off the shelf. In the past, we've been rested on our laurels a little bit, but now, because we're out in the retail world, we are going to outsource to an agency to make sure it's the best lemon drizzle flapjack and improve on it every single time, every single month, improve on that recipe. Whereas in the past we'd have said, it's amazing, I've been to the place where it's made, it's a family-run bakery in the Cotswolds, I can't make it any better. And that's ridiculous. If you think like that, then you're going to go backwards. So we're trying to improve on our bestsellers all the time, as well as bringing in new stuff. So yes, completely paranoid, which is healthy.
So when you talk about patient handbook, is it specific to non-software or
No.
Said non-software?
Yeah,
They're developed for 10 to 15 years, so is it just like it got to be biotech specific?
No, absolutely. So we invest across the board, and software companies will take our money as well as anyone else's. I just think the options for a software company are wider than the options for a biotech or engineering or something like that. For they cannot tap into crowdsourcing, they can't tap into angel networks so easily. Whereas software actually can tap into any network because their exit profile is so much closer to home and they're easier to understand.
So I think we've only got room for maybe one more question. So someone who hasn't asked one yet. We got the gentleman at the back there.
I've come from a 100-person medtech company, pre-revenue still, so very similar to what you were talking about. We don't necessarily have patient investors at the minute, and we are definitely going through that change that we were talking about in terms of focusing on revenue and commercialisation and looking at management structures. How would you help us potentially avoid the possible pitfall of assuming we can get our answers from a big brand consultancy, drop them 100 grand and they'll come back with the ultimate answer? And that's the sort of talk that's starting to flow from the corridors. I'm really interested in your perspectives across the board there in terms of how we can move forward on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that most of our businesses, to be honest, don't use the big sort of management consultancy firms simply because of price. They do take advice from consultants regularly, and they tell you what they use the most is their investors. So their investors tend to come with really good networks of people who can advise the business, and the investors have seen the journey all the way through. So it doesn't matter what stage of the journey those companies are at, they'll have someone they can recommend them to. So probably I would say go to your investors, assuming you've got some, and they should be able to put you in touch with the right people.
And I would say if you haven't, you said maybe your investors aren't those long-term investors, maybe you need to be thinking about how your investors' strategy and your own strategy are aligned. So maybe you do need to go look for those long-term investors who can support you for that much longer journey.
I'd like to just end on one last question, more sort of reflecting. We've spoken a bit about the challenges, but we've had many people from Imperial who've gone on and set up successful companies who've actually gone and been bought by US investors who often see it as a great deal and actually envy the UK, sort of the truly lean startup model on the basis that they're doing so much with so little. And often the operating models that UK scale-ups have are much, far more lean and far more consistent than their US counterparts. So, John, I was wondering if we could start with you, and from your perspective as an Englishman in the States, is there anything about the UK that's particularly special in terms of maybe the lean startup and doing a lot with less?
I think not, because in fact the eras of really, really well-funded startups, and they do occur, where you'll read about startups where they get very generous rounds, and pretty soon there are fancy cars in the parking lot, and table football and ping pong and stuff like that. VCs don't like that. They actually literally will ask soon after the investment to be taken to lunch in the CEO's car, because they want to make sure that the CEO is still driving the same 6-year-old Honda Civic as he had when he was looking for money or she was looking for money. In particular, this is true for software startups, where getting to the sort of first MVP demo is something that can be done with hundreds of thousands as opposed to millions. Many of the VCs are quite content to see the principals in the companies that they're investing in surviving, if necessary, by sleeping on their friends' couches and really not living well-funded lives at all. So on average, I would say VCs are just as careful with their money as over here as it sounds like they are over there.
Yeah, I think it's a badge of honour in Britain, isn't it? You know, I know for Innocent, for years and years and years, even when we were about 60, 70 million, we were still in this hut with a tin roof, and I couldn't speak to the Sainsbury's buyer when it rained because it was so noisy. And I don't know, when I was a buyer at Tesco, I did work with quite a lot of startups and entrepreneurs that came in with a little, you know, new gizmo, and I always check the car out. They make lots of money. And I also think the third part for me is, when you founded something, if it's a business unit or a company, you love it. It's just so much part of your life, and it's this sort of giving away the responsibility. I maintained a very flat hierarchy for as long as I physically and possibly could, until I literally needed a bit more sleep. And then you start employing people. So I think there's lots of different elements. I think it's a bit of a badge of honour for Brits. It's like stiff upper lip, and it's leaking, but it's fine.
I would, completely support that. We can only take calls at certain points in the day. I have to jump away from. We're right by the train line, the Queen's Park train station. They hurtle past. We have to avoid certain times for big calls. But I think you're motivated in a way to keep things lean at the start, because you want to preserve your cash. You want to make sure you can spend it on the key bits for driving things forward. And when you're the first sort of 10 in, comfort chairs, food on tap or whatever it is, a ping pong table, it's not what motivates.
And do you find hiring talent is an issue? Has that ever been a problem?
I think we've got a lot of coders, and coders in London, the price is rocketing. I don't know if you find the same, but it's just incredible, and that causes trouble at the moment. I think that's a big issue, but. And then we've got the financial services side, and they sort of seem to be quite greedy as well in terms of what they're after. And
we're in beautiful Richmond, right on the river, and we're not in Shoreditch, but there's a bit of a tech hub, Richmond. I don't know if anyone knows this, but eBay there, Groupon's there. There's loads of us, not on the high street, etc. And so we're kind of pulling people in.
Try to avoid those hubs. That's Queen's Park's very cheap. Beside the railway line. It's actually pretty good.
From the London Stock Exchange perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say that US investors do look at the UK market, and actually over the last few years, UK IPOs have, I'd say the money raised from UK IPOs, probably 30 to 40% on average comes from US investors. So I think companies that are growing here can actually continue to access the international market from here. I think that is actually something really special about the UK market, that we do attract that international capital. And I think the US investors also look here because there is that scarcity value. So they are able to get a good deal. And then you do get companies which are listing here, European or UK businesses listing here, and competitors listing in the US, who probably actually get the same kind of valuation in both countries. So the example is Just Eat listed here a few years ago, and Grubhub in the US listed, I think, either on the same day or the day after, and actually Just Eat got a better valuation and a better longer term valuation as well.
Just on the capital point, I'll give a slight counterpoint, but I think it's the type of businesses. So organic growth businesses, where you're growing them from the very bottom up, every penny counts, and you're going to manage them leanly and very effectively. If you're an R&D intensive business, actually I think in the UK in the past we've been slightly guilty of drip feeding capital in tiny little amounts. So as fast as the management team are bringing in the money, the first thing they're doing is thinking about the next round, and they're not focusing on the business. And in recent years, we've seen a bit of a response to that. We've seen some more US-style first-round fundings, which I think gives the company a bit of breathing space to actually focus on the technology.
Well, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to John, Emma, Carl, Omera, and Tony for being on the panel tonight, and in an unusual way, I think. Special thanks to James Shepherd and the team at the Imperial Incubator for hosting us this evening as well. James at the back, thank you very much for that. And Grace for the Grace boxes you're thank you all very much for coming, and I know it's a long way from South Kensington, or feels like a long way, but do please enjoy now, drinks and networking downstairs.